Alright, so let's preface this by stating that I am possibly more casual than I'm possibly more casual than a lot of the competitor players of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, and I don't profess myself as an official game master or someone who has game theory in his training. But what I do have is a sort of curiosity. So, in case you aren't aware of the Yu-Gi-Oh scene, Konami have recently released a new format for the Yu-Gi-Oh official Yu-Gi-Oh card game, and that is Yu-Gi-Oh Genesys, spelled with a Y. So, what is Yu-Gi-Oh Genesys? Well, essentially, every card is here. You are able to use every card that has been printed thus far and will be printed, with two exceptions. The first exception is that you're not allowed to use Link monsters or Pendulum monsters. And the second exception is that a lot of the quote-unquote problem cards have been assigned points. And you're only allowed to use cards up to a certain amount of points when you build your deck. The standard value is 100. Though outright stated that venues are allowed to change this at will. And they have released a list of the cards, as well as a deck list site, albeit it's not too good, but it's usable. And one quick look at the list will show you that a good amount of these cards on this list are 100, which tells me, yes, you can use forbidden cards, but this will severely limit your deck out of a lot of good options that are also on the list, such as Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring being at 15 points, for example. This adds a bit of complexity to the deck building and allows a chance for creativity to thrive, which I'm all for. However, we're not here to talk about game theory per se. We're here to talk about structure, or rather, the structure decks. So, ever since a certain time, structure decks have become a sort of staple way of getting yourself a deck in order to right off the bat play Yu-Gi-Oh! And it has been advertised that you can just pick up a deck and go at it. Now, the older decks obviously aren't exactly up to par when it comes to this. But after about a week thinking on the Genesys point system, I have to wonder, is this the point system under which the structure decks was designed under? That is exactly what I'm going to find out today. And as this might be a hot topic, perhaps, I also decided to coincide this with something else. So, what I have here is some avocado toast. And a couple of days ago, I saw this in the grocery store. Ghost Pepper Strawberry Jelly. I had red pepper jelly, which had a bit of a kick to me, but was delectable. But I'm aware that Ghost Pepper is by far the most dangerous of the peppers. So I felt like starting off, though, putting this on there. And for anyone who's concerned, I'm only going to do a slight touch, slight slather, small, thin layer. I'm not trying to kill myself per se. I'm not a certain cat girl VTuber. I reckon I might, at the very least, have trouble later on the throne. At least that's the best case scenario I can hope for. Worst case, I'll be on the sidelines for about 30 minutes. Alright. Over the teeth, past the gums. Look out, everyone, here it comes. Not so bad, but I imagine it's going to get worse. Yep. Yep. And it's gonna... So I better hurry up and get started. Let me see. Alright. So yes, here we are at the deck builder. So let's get started. Here we go. Alright. There's the deck list. So, let's get started. We have... Oh, hold up. There we go. Let's see. We have Red Eyes Black Dragon and Red Eyes Darkness Dragon. Oh. Two Luster Dragons. Let's see. Where's the point values? So no points so far, but then again, they're not that problematic. We'll know once we get to them. Twin-headed Behemoth and the Armed Dragons. And yes, I actually remember this being the first structure deck I ever pulled, ever grabbed. Let's see. Twin-headed Behemoth. Oh, we can have multiples, but that ability is only usable once per duel, last I checked. You can, when it's destroyed, I think, yeah, when it's destroyed, you can special summon it again. Which I think that's by design because of certain cards that take advantage of that. So, Armed Dragons, level 3 and 5. Armed Dragon. The original Armed Dragon. Where's level 3? Hello? Something's going on. I'll just have to switch the text. Got 2 of those. And then there's level 5. Image is starting to mess up, so alright. Let's Then we got Black Dragon's Chick, Element Dragon, and the 3 Masked Dragons. Now, first thing to notice is that it only has 14 monster cards in the deck. Yeah, the structure decks back then, I guess, didn't have much of us. I mean, yeah, didn't seem that much of a good one. Alright, so now we're going to get into some when we get into some cards that will likely have some point values to them. Let's see how far we go before we hit the 100-point mark. Starting with Snatch Steal. Okay, right off the bat, we've added 7 points to the deck. Next, Mystical Space Typhoon and 2 Noblemen of Crossouts. We'll likely get to see older cards in decks now that this point system's up. People will have to look back and see what alternatives they can use to certain cards. Let's see. Alright, we might have a problem with Premature Burial. Swords of Revealing Light should be okay though. Go up. And we've got 25 points added. Now, Swords of Revealing Light. So that brings us to 32 now. The burning's gone. Time for another bite. Here we have 2 trouble cards that might put us over. Let's see. Back then, is Heavy Storm banned today? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. 5 green and Heavy Storm. Like, Pot of Greed, I think, was worth 50. Let's double check that, shall we? Here we go. No, 30. Still, that's still a lot of points. And then we've got Heavy Storm, worth 20 points. Bringing us to 82, which means we've got 18 more points to spare. And we've got, let's see, how many per row? We've got, well, how about that? 18 points to spare with 18 cards to go. Although I'm not seeing any issue cards among the lineup, but I only glanced at the list a couple of times. I might have missed a few. We'll see where this takes us. Ooh. Got to the back of my throat. That might be a problem. Spiciness got to the back of my throat. That might be a problem. Let's see. Stamping Destruction. Three of these suckers. This was my favorite Spell Destruction card back in the day, though Mystical Space Typhoon might have been more powerful. But Stamping Destruction lets you deal damage at the same time. Doesn't hurt. Let's see, creature swap and reload. This, I might have skipped over that one. So 2 creature swaps, adding 2 more points. Not so bad though. And reload. Load. There we go. Reload's okay. The magical mallet would be a preferable replacement. I wonder if that had any points added to it. Who knows? One graveyard in the 4th dimension. So far, so good. And then they added Call of the Haunted. That's good. And then Ceasefire, Dragon Speed, Dragon's Rage. We just put in the Dragon Speed. We're at 84 points. Let's see. Reckless Greed. That was a big card back in the day. I suspect that these last 5 cards won't add any points to it. Reckless Greed was a big one, I remember. It lets you draw 2 cards because at the time, Pot of Greed was banned. It still is, but not in Genesys. But as you've seen, it is worth quite a few points. Let's see what Reckless Greed's got. But yes, while it does let you draw 2 cards, you'll have to skip your next 2 draw phases. However, it was a trap card, so after the first turn when you set it, you can just activate it whenever you wanted. How many was it? 2? 1. So it was a fine addition. But as the game went on, traps became more and more, they became less useful in use, but I'm sure they'll make a comeback in this format. Interdimensional matter transporter. Transporter. The trap jammer and jammer. Let's see. And Curse of Anubis. Alright, so let's name this. Alright. So, Dragon's Roar, final tally. We've got 14 monsters, 26 spells and traps, and point value 84. See, all in all, quick looking at it, seems like a very unbalanced deck. Not a lot of monsters to work with, so you'll be relying on your spell cards to either try to hold off your opponent or refresh what monsters you've already used. Furthermore, the structure decks of the way back then featured monsters that required a specific monster to be attributed to special summon it for a what would now be considered a mediocre effect. So if they were to revamp this deck, they could keep it as it is, but perhaps replace the Red Eyes Darkness Dragon for Darkness Metal Dragon, or at the very least add another Red Eyes somehow to it. Perhaps more ways of getting it out, like it would probably add 1 more Red Eyes and maybe 2 more Black Dragons Chick. And to make it more modern, maybe replace the level 3 and level 5 armed dragons for their Thunder counterparts. Possibly. Alright. So that's this deck. Now I'll have that saved up. I think it automatically saves. We've got Dragon's Roar here. What's this? Okay. So now, let's look at the next one. Let's see here. So, alongside Dragon's Roar, they released Zombie Madness. Let's see if I can't search that up here. Alright, so, and right off the bat, we're seeing a lot of cards that are currently banned in the standard format. So let's see how it stacks up in Genesys. And let's see if the point value remains the same. So, starting with Vampire Genesys. Where are you? There you are. That is the boss monster of the deck. I'm going to take one more bite of my toast. Don't know though. Pretty good experience. I might be screaming on the can later, but I like that ghost pepper. Anyways, as I was saying, it's helping me vocalize a bit too, I think. Vampire Genesys was the boss monster of this deck. Alright. And it required Vampire Lord to summon it, last I checked. Let me double check that real quick. Yep. You have to banish a Vampire Lord you control. And as per usual, you only get one copy. So much for pick up and play, right? Anyways, Master Kyonshi. Oh wait. Actually, let's go ahead and put in Vampire Lord. Is there a Vampire Lady? Yes, there was. Dark Dust Spirit. Now, Pyramid Turtle is a pretty powerful floater for back in the day, as it was one of the few floater monsters that searched out through the defense points. And since it was searching out zombie monsters, you could pretty much search out any zombie monster. Because zombie monsters notoriously have very low, if any, defense. And this puppy searched out 7,000 for special summon, but 2,000 or less defense. So, very powerful searcher. I think it might have gotten limited once, maybe, I don't know. And this deck comes with 3 of them. Pyramid Turtle. However, as searchers became less and less viable, so too, as the floaters became less and less viable, so too did Pyramid Turtle. But who knows? They may make a comeback in this format. Time will tell. And it also had Spirit Reaper, so yeah, I believe I did grab this deck, purely for the fact of some of the powerful cards in here, Spirit Reaper being one of them. Way back when, a monster that survives the battle is a great defense. And Spirit Reaper was one of the big 2. The other one being Marshmallow. Although, well yes, Marshmallow, and I think there was one that you could use to tribute fairy type monsters. Gel Duo, I think. Spirit Reaper would probably have been seen as the worst of the 3. For if you target it for a card effect, it automatically gets destroyed. Possibly them trying to, probably an early forerunner of illusion monsters. Despair from the Dark. It's 1S, some words I have trouble remembering. Despair from the Dark. We're at 2. And already, I'm starting to recall the problem with this deck, and I'm wondering if you're seeing it as well. Which now, yes, it has a similar problem from the previous structure deck, the Dragon's Roar, but compound to the fact that a lot of these monsters, a good chunk of them at least, requires a tribute summon. Especially Dark Dust Spirit. And you have precious little to spare as far as monsters go. But I think the point of it was to have spell cards to supplement that fact and bring them back. Especially with Book of Life. Book of Life was a problematic card back in the start of the Synchro era. Because it banishes your monsters while bringing back theirs. Let's see. And with Zombie World, that became a compounded issue. Ryukaki. Soul-absorbing Bone Tower. No points so far. I think we'll see most of the points coming from the spells and traps. Double Coston and Regenerating Mummy. Alright. Total monster count, 17. Double checking my count. Yeah. Yeah, that's everybody. Alright. Now to the spells. And right off the bat, I'm seeing quite a few at the start. That'll likely add some points. Let's see if we go over. Alright, so first culprit, Snatch Steal. $7 points. Mystical Space Typhoon and Giant Trinade. Giant Trinade, 40 points. Did I click it? There we go. Bringing us to 47 right off the bat. And we're only halfway through. Let's see. Nobleman, Pot of Greed. Okay, it's 77. Getting close. Card of Safe Return and Heavy Storm. They went really hard. Card of Safe Return. And with that, we have gone over. So yes, this deck featured a lot of powerful but bannable cards. And this is the first culprit, making me think that, at least for the first two, they didn't really have much of a system for building decks outside of pick a type. Like, first two cards will be interlinked by way of having to summon it with that monster. Thinking that'll limit it only one copy, but no, it just cripples it. But then, you have powerful cards like Snatch Steel, and it also, Giant Grenade is enough, but having Giant Grenade and Heavy Storm, and then both decks have Pot of Greed, which was, it used to be a 3 of before it got limited then banned. And Card of Safe Return was an equally problematic card. But I get the feeling that the rest of these cards are just, you know, simple enough. Nothing wrong with it. So yeah, Zombie Madness. Zombie Madness is a bust, and as for Dragon's Roar, that one's underpowered because it could stand to use a few more cards to it. But that concludes this session of the Genesys callback. I think I'll try this again next week with the next two sets. That being Blaze of Destruction and Fury from the Deep. Those two might have had they probably have learned from their mistakes since those two. So we'll see.